Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Reckless Optimist podcast. My name is Megan. I'm a family nurse practitioner with a deep passion for mental health. On this show, we showcase guests who have shown tenacity, grit, mental strength, and who embody the word resilience. A quick disclaimer before we start. This show is not a substitute for mental diagnosis or treatment. We do recommend that if you're struggling with your own emotional well-being, you see a mental health provider. I'm so excited that you guys are here. Let's get into it. Today we have Jamie on the podcast. I'm so excited for you guys to hear her story. Her energy is just amazing. It comes through on the podcast. And she is someone that I met 3 years ago in recovery. She and I met at a retreat and we just clicked. She's very bubbly. She has a really interesting story. She lost her mother when she was young and her relationship with alcohol kind of took a turn from there. She definitely suffered from people pleasing and feelings of insecurity, and that really kind of fueled her alcohol use disorder. She had a day where she woke up on April 17th, 2019, looked around at her life and it was in complete shambles, and she turned her life around after that. It's really a beautiful story of resilience and overcoming, and I'm so excited for you guys to hear it. She is a recovery advocate, has a sober group called Sober IRL. She lives in New York and she is thriving up there. She also works for Child Protective Services. We joke in the interview, because she's a big fan of Lilo and Stitch, that she is like Mr. Bubbles from that movie. Such a good movie, by the way. But anyway, I'm so excited for you guys to hear this interview. So let's get into it. Hey, everyone. Help me welcome Jamie to the podcast.
Hi, everybody.
I am so glad you're here. I have to tell everyone how me and you know each other. So I met Jamie, gosh, I think it was 3 years ago. Was it 3 years ago?
Probably about 3 years ago. Yep.
Okay. At a recovery elevator retreat. It was actually in Atlanta, quote unquote Atlanta, outside of Atlanta. And me and you just clicked. I felt like we sat next to each other at some event, like round table event, and you were telling me your story. And I'm pretty sure that me and you have very similar sober dates. Remind me your sober date again.
Yes, mine is next month. It's April 7th, 2019.
Yes, that's right. Because mine's April 21st, 2019.
That's right.
And this episode will actually come out that day, which is so cool.
Stop it. Oh my God. It's kismet.
Yes.
It's serendipity. I love it.
I love it. Is serendipity. And
There's no coincidences in my life, is what I've learned in my journey. So I love that.
I absolutely love that. So yeah, we really clicked that weekend. I felt like we became best friends, and we've stayed in touch through the years. And when I was thinking about who I wanted my first few guests to be, you were like the first one that popped up, because I know you're experienced in talking about your story, and you just have like a really magnetic personality, and you're just someone that's super high energy, and someone I think of that has like embodies the word resilience for sure.
I take that and I hold in, I thank you. And it's just been wonderful to see you on your journey as well, and what has happened since we've last even seen each other in person. It's wonderful. Thank you so much for those words, Megan. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are going to start, like we do every episode, with a quote. I love quotes. I literally think about quotes that have meant a lot to me all day long. Like I'm in a certain situation and I think about a quote and it helps me get through it. I know that sounds really dramatic, but so this is a quote. If you follow me on social media, you've probably heard me type out this quote in any of my captions, so you might be sick of it, but it really stuck with me. Do you watch Ted Lasso?
Absolutely. I hear there might be a 4th season coming out, which means I need to keep my Apple subscription then. That's what it's telling me.
Yes. So this is a Ted Lasso quote from the TV show. Are you ready? So after I read it, just tell me what it means to you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The quote goes, "I hope that none of us are judged by the actions of our weakest moments, but rather by the strength we show when we were given a second chance."
Ooh, that quote hits. I definitely felt at my weakest in many parts of my recovery journey. Recovery from alcohol, recovery from people pleasing, recovery from codependency, all those kinds of things. I definitely felt I judged myself the most in those moments of weakness, because the only person I am around all day, every day is myself, right? So I love the idea of second chances. I think that's a beautiful thing. I think it shows an open-heartedness when ourselves or other people are willing to give second chances when they've seen us in our weakest moments. And I think it's important for us to take a hold of those second chances and not take them for granted, and take them with gratitude and with the idea that, you know, we don't need to hold on to the past. We can focus on what's going on now in the present and plan for the future in the best way we can by using our tools.
I love that. That was Perfect answer. So for me, this quote means a lot of things. I mean, it definitely brings up like the whole redemption growth type of thing rather than, living in like a victimhood or punishment mindset. It's more of a growth mindset. I also feel like it makes me think of two other quotes. This is going to be an
You're like an encyclopedia up there, Megan. You're an encyclopedia.
It's going to be an episode on quotes. But one is, someone told me this one time when I was a waitress at Mellow Mushroom, like 20 years ago. One of my customers was like, "You're not a prisoner of your past. You're a product of it." And it makes me think of that. And then also makes me think of one bad chapter doesn't mean your story's over. I think I heard that in a Peloton class, but it stuck with me. And I mean, I think all of that just kind of shows that, you can come back from whatever it is, like your deepest, darkest moment. You can definitely come back from it. And it's very powerful to come back from it. I mean, everyone loves a comeback story anyway.
Absolutely. I don't know if you have read the book, What Happened to You. It was written by Oprah, and I can't remember the doctor's name. It studies children, this book, and it kind of talks about trauma and resiliency. And it talks a lot about like everyone's like, what's wrong with you when they encounter children, even adults, but it's more like what happened to you and understanding like how the brain works and how we don't need to be a product of what happened to us, but to have that understanding that what happened to us did happen and it changed things in our brain and that there are ways to move forward by doing a holistic approach is what the doctor in this book says about treating children who then become adults who lead the future,
I love that. I also think like, as a provider and I have patients coming in, like one thing I love to do is like inject curiosity into a question. So rather than like, why are they this way? Being like, asking questions to figure out, what patterns are going on, being more curious in nature rather than like judgmental of someone and what they've gone through.
Curious instead of accusatory. We love that,
Oh, I love that.
Curious versus accusatory, because not to get all into like what's going on in my story yet, but I just finished being certified as a life coach and, we talk about the lizard brain a lot in life coaching and about how it will protect you at all costs. So if you're not asking the right questions to your clients, they're just going to give you the surface answer of what's going on with them. But being curious, like you mentioned, really helps them to like run away from that lizard part of their brain and really be able to access, what's going on that's not going to put them in a fight or flight mode, because asking for help, boy, did that put me in fight or flight when I was, out there and trying to do everything by myself. And if we're curious, we'll be able to help clients find the answers for themselves or guide them to places where, the answers will come for them.
Yeah, I love that. I think, the last thing I'll say about this quote is that in some ways, I think about the things that I've gone through, and I'm sure you can relate to this, but like being on a health journey and being diagnosed with asthma, going through a divorce, all of these things, I feel like I've been given a second chance, and I feel like I'm like a wild animal that has been set free from her cage. So that to me is my act too. And yeah, I want to be remembered for those things and not my weakest moments.
Absolutely. And you're doing that right now by doing the service of this podcast. I love the idea of being of service. It really keeps us grounded in the connection because we're hardwired for connection, as
Absolutely.
cave people, we only survived because we relied on each other, and we live in such a disconnected place now, especially with what's going on politically, that it is important for us to remember that connection will keep us grounded to what's important to us and surround us with the right people that'll help us on it.
Yeah, I love that. So I want to get more into your story. I'm so excited for the guests to hear everything about you. You are such an amazing person. So feel free to just take us back to the beginning and just share everything that you've gone through.
Absolutely. Well, as Meg mentioned, her and I met on the recovery journey from alcohol specifically, and I really do think that mental health is tied into that for me. I always felt like the outlier, when it came to my alcohol story, because I'd never been arrested and I'd never been, never lost a job, my home. I've never been to rehab, like all these nevers or not yets, as we like to say sometimes. And it's very similar with my mental health. Like I've never been like diagnosed with any sort of mental health issue. I've never been, I've never gone inpatient or needed to like get some sort of, outside of therapy, get some sort of like more intensive treatment. And because of that, for a long time, it made me feel like, no, I'm fine. Like, this is just life. This is how this life is. Life goes in cycles up and down, but it's also important to remember that if we're not taking care of our mind, body, spirit, as I like to say, that, anxiety and depression, those kind of things can very easily creep up into our lives without knowing it. When I think about the early days of my drinking journey and things of that nature, like it was definitely tied to these feelings of no self-worth, of self-loathing, of not being good enough, of drinking to drown out all of the voices. We call it the committee in life coaching. The committee in my head of all the voices that contribute to the way that I feel, to the way that I direct my life, you know? And, I know that, I drank more when my mental health was not well, when I was in, relationships that weren't, giving me what I needed, or relationships that were less than, and I don't say that in a judgmental place. I say that like, I just accepted whatever came. So I would bend over backwards for people and put myself in situations that were not beneficial for me just to have love. And I think about that me now, 6 years later, and how like, oh my goodness, like I will never sacrifice myself for anybody again just to feel loved, because I am love and there's so much love in my life. And, and when I think about recovery and mental health and sobriety and things like that, I think about, for me, how important routine is to that. And I'm sure you can relate as somebody who also is looking after their physical health. If I am not regularly going to the gym, strength training, riding my bike, which is my new favorite thing in sobriety. I learned how to ride a bike 2 years ago. It's like my whole personality. If I can't run anymore, because I used to run, I'm going to ride a bike now. If I don't go to yoga, if I don't connect with my sober and recovery friends, if I don't have time to myself, if I don't do these things, like I can feel my anxiety, my anxious nature start to creep up on me again. For me, like my anxiety likes to manifest in two ways. This is great podcasts that I also interviewed for called Love Your Anxiety, which are like, what the heck was that? Like, love your anxiety? No, thank you. Instead of like our mental health issues, like something to push away or something to deny or something to like, that's not me, that's not happening. Love Your Anxiety kind of explains that, your anxiety manifests from two different like thoughts, it's I'm not good enough or I'm not safe. And both of those anxieties love to show up in my life, even today, in regards to, these anxious thoughts that I have and the fatalizing I like to do when I'm presented with a situation that I feel is like, I'm not in control of it. So I'm going to fatalize about it and think about every possible thing that could happen so I can prepare myself to deal with it. When none of those things are going to happen, I'm literally just like spinning my wheels trying to like have this control, and that's what I love about also being on the spiritual journey is I do have a higher power in my life today. She's the universe. That's just the easiest way for me to explain to her. So like, when I'm in those like anxiety places, like really like taking a breath, deep breathing, and, literally playing to my higher power, just being like, I'm having a moment right now. I really need I need some solace. I need some guidance. I need some wisdom. I just need you. Like, please help me through this. And sometimes just that pause is enough for me to kind of like regroup and move about my day. My anxiety got so worse in sobriety. It got to the point at one point where I was ready to take a magic pill. I was going to go to psychiatrist and be like, please fix me. I don't want to deal with what's going on in my head. Please, like I will take whatever you want me to do. And that definitely was a low point for me in my mental health journey. As I mentioned, I was a runner and I had an injury, and I found running after sobriety. And when that running journey was suddenly stopped for me, it really put me in a tailspin. It was something I thought was God given to me. There was a reason why I was running. There was a reason why, I found this new exercise that I thought I could never do. Like, I also have asthma. I've had it since I was a kid. I can never run, and because I believed that belief, I told myself I never tried until, I got sober and I wanted to do this like 5K in honor of my mom, at my 1 year of sobriety, and I ran it with my best friend because at that time it was the pandemic, and like, a high from running, like it's no joke when we say it's a runner's high,
Mm-hmm.
So at that time when I felt like I lost it. I felt like it was even stolen. Like I was like, God, like, what are you doing? Like, why did you take this from me? You gave this to me. Why did you take it from me? And reasons have come since, like, if I'd never stopped running, I never would have gotten the courage to ride a bike for the first time and pay old man Don to teach me how to ride this bike from professorpedals.com. Highly recommend. They have
Shout
places
out.
all over. Shout out. They have places all over the country, I think, that do this. And, it just gave me so much more confidence in myself. I started strength training after my injury, and I do an adult dance class every Wednesday night. It's adult hip hop. Again, like I was never like a dancer, but like, so all these things I thought I wasn't, I got to become because of this one thing that was so terrible in my life that I thought was never going to change. It gave me all these blessings,
Yeah.
so it's hard to see it when you're in the middle of it, but you just got to keep going through it. You can't go around it, under it, over it. You have to go through it.
Yeah.
And as you probably could relate as well, Meg, like, when we're going through things, it's because God, higher power, whatever, wants us to share that with other people and to share how we got through similar situations that they may be going through. So I love that also about the journey. But, for me, I would never have, gotten to the place where I am now at 39 years old, bike riding, and, I got a promotion at work eventually, and I just finished my life coaching, and I'm going to start being training to become an interfaith minister for another 6 months.
Wow.
So like I have all these like crazy things going
I
on right
love it.
now.
Big
Oh my God.
goals, girl.
Big
Big
goals,
goals.
I would love to
Yeah.
retire early. That's the real goal. So we'll see.
I love it. So I have a few questions or a few things I want to comment on about specifically about the anxiety. I also have anxiety and I've learned a lot about it. I think sometimes anxiety is just like pent up energy. And so the things that you were
Mm.
describing, like exercise and all of that, like gets rid of some of that energy. And so we don't always have to look at anxiety as a bad thing because, in the olden times, anxiety kept us alive, right? They kept us from danger and stuff like that.
Absolutely. It did. And what I'm also thinking there is, I feel like I'm the most like keen, even keeled, stable, quote unquote, which is a weird word, but that's the word that's coming up right now. When I'm regularly in my exercise routine, because like you said, it kind of like just like de-stresses, like it just like releases things. It helps me really connect to my body and listen to my body. And certainly like anxiety things have come up around working out for me. And like I'm older now. So like, strain things here and there. And like my old coping mechanism was to like freak out about it and have anxiety about it and be like, oh my God, I'm never going to work out ever again in my life. Funny
Yeah.
things. But now it's more, I'm learning that I need to listen to my body and use those tools. I know how to take care of my body and like, whatever I have to do to kind of deal with that. And, my other thought about anxiety, like you mentioned, is that, like it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It could be a tool that helps us with our essentials.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about, when we were talking about your running and how, when you injured yourself, you were really upset and frustrated. I can totally relate to that as a runner myself. And you were like, gosh, this horrible thing, why did this happen to me? I was reading something the other day about journal prompts, and it was talking about, bad things that have happened to you in your life. If you write it down and then come back like 6 weeks to 12 weeks later and then write down like what good came from that bad, quote unquote, bad thing. Do you ever do anything like that? Do you ever journal?
Oh my gosh. I used to journal a lot more in my early recovery. And even getting up to the point of getting sober. Like I definitely had a few years, which now I want to go look at it and reflect. Even up to a few years before I got sober, like I was journaling all the time, just writing out my thoughts about what was going on in my life. And, around that time, I began this like spiritual journey of like, the universe. What does that mean? And a belief in like something else being out there that's greater than myself. I think that's a great idea. Just having that moment of like, this is how I am right now. And then going forward 6 weeks, 12 weeks and seeing, what good came from that or what lessons you came from that, came from that, for you. I think that's a beautiful idea. I'm doing a lot of writing these days with life coaching. And, so I'm kind of getting back to that point of like, of kind of like being introspective about like how I'm behaving with other people and, what my role is in my joy and my suffering. We talk a lot about that in life coaching and stuff. So I'm kind of getting back to like writing again, but on like a different level.
I love that. I love journaling for anxiety. As a provider, it's easy for me to get my female patients to journal. My male patients always struggle with it. They're like, you want me to write in a diary? I'm like, hang on a second. We're going to
Not a
work through
diary.
this. Exactly. I think journaling is so helpful. Well, I want to go a little bit back into your story. What age were you when you started drinking?
I was a late bloomer. I would categorize myself as. I didn't really start drinking until I was like 17 or 18. Like when I got to college is when it really started to take off. And, as a college student being away from my family for the first time, like I felt free. I'm like, I can do whatever I want. I'm an adult now. And certainly that's when it started to become problematic because, blacking out started to become like a regular occurrence when I was in college. And I thought it was just like a normal thing because everyone else did it. But, when everyone else kind of like chilled out once college was over, like I was just revving up. Like I was just like, I was like, I have arrived and like, I'm a real adult. And, losing my mom, right after grad school, from cancer, definitely, changed me. And, I didn't know how to deal with those feelings of like, loss and grief, and because I had a difficult relationship with my mom because of some things that happened between us growing up, like some like completely shattered trust is what I'll share. Because of that, I was always like trying to find love to repair that relationship with my mom. I realized recently, which is why the journey of growth is wonderful. By if I get this person to love me, then that's going to fix this relationship that I have with my mom, is what I was telling myself, because love is going to fix me, which is not realistic. I'm going to fix me. Someone else cannot fix this God-sized hole, this Jamie-shaped hole. Jamie's got to look at that and see what she needs to do to realize that she is worthy of love and an equal partnership, and and to know that no matter what, I have myself. And I never thought I had myself, if that makes sense. When I was younger and when I was drinking, I was like, oh, I need someone else to complete me. No, I don't. I'm a complete person the way I am, and to be dating now in my late 30s is definitely a wild, weird journey compared to where I was in my early 30s, and what was I willing to tolerate from other people and what I would do for other people. And it was very much tied to my drinking, because drinking is this fake lubricant of connection with people. I thought it made me cooler, better, smarter, prettier, funnier, when I was drinking, when in reality it really did the opposite. And I got all of those things I just mentioned by getting sober, by focusing on myself and on my mental health and taking care of myself and making myself a priority in my life.
Yeah, I love that. I think when you're going through really hard things, it's hard to see the lesson, like kind of going back to the whole journal prompt that we were just talking about, or even like what you were just talking about with your mom. Like, it's really hard in the moment to have it all figured out and realize, okay, this is teaching me something. It's one of those things that you have to look back on retrospectively. So if you're going through something really hard, just know you don't have to have it all figured out right then. The lesson is learned later on down the road, and that's okay too.
Yeah, and trust that, and trust in that process. I have quite a few different recovery communities and friendship groups that I lean on. And, sometimes we just need a vent about what's going on right there and then, just to kind of get it out and know that it's going to be okay on the other side. But when you're in it, you don't feel okay. And that's okay. It's the messiness of being human, is, being able to, kind of like sit with all these different feelings and thoughts you're having about a situation. And, it's just like, I don't know, like, how people do life without people that they can talk to, like really talk to, like this kind of talking, because it just feels like such a lonely existence if people don't have this kind of community, which is why it's important to reach your hand out as best as you can to people who are struggling out there with whatever they're going through. Because, just being kind to one person one day may change the whole trajectory of your life. And not to be like, ooh, ego, that feels great. No, it just means like, you don't know what other people are going through, whoever they are. And it costs nothing to be kind to people. And if anything, like I mentioned, it could change the trajectory of their whole life. They could be going to do something that they don't want to do, but they feel like they have to do it. And by having that interaction with you could, change what they want to do, how they want to move forward, So I think that's also important to remember, that we're all going through shit. And it's important to, as best you can, to treat everybody as if how you want them to treat you too,
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I also think you bring up a really good point about like the common denominator I see in people that relapse or have to go back out and do field research is that they weren't in a community or they weren't connected to their community. Do you feel similar to that?
I feel very similar to that. Absolutely. It's very easy to slip back into your old thinking patterns or behaviors when you have no accountability. You have no accountability with other people. So that is often how I find in one of my specific communities that, if you are not doing the things that got you sober in the beginning, if you start slacking on that and start to drift away, it's much easier for the winds of alcoholism to come and snatch you up again and take you back out, And besides the accountability piece, I also think it's important to remember, especially with sobriety, with from alcohol, drugs, that like quote unquote normal people don't understand what's going on in your head. They don't understand what you're going through. They don't understand what alcoholism and addiction really is. They don't understand that you can't just stop. They don't understand that like having a family or a partner or whatever, that's not going to make you stop. And they think that it should, all these different things, and having people like Recovery Elevator, where we originally met, Cafe RE, having my other sober communities, Sober IRL, and the other big one that we shall not name, but we know what it is, having those recovery communities and where they understand, I love having people coming to my Sober IRL virtual events and be like, oh my God, like you all like understand what I'm going through. Like nobody understands what's happening. Like I thought that I was like this like weird freak. I'm like, well, welcome to the freak show. We're all real freaks then. Totally
It's
fine.
way
You're welcome here.
more fun to be
It is.
different than to be perfect and all the same, homogenous. But I want to go back to your story about your mom. And I want to, just let you know sincerely, I feel for you in those moments. You were a young person who lost their mother, in their 20s. And that is a life altering event. I mean, there's the you before your mom passed away, and then there's the you after. Different people. I went through something similar with my father. He passed away when I was young as well. So I can relate to you, and I know how painful that is. Do you feel like your relationship with alcohol took a turn after that?
Eventually it did. At first, like I was in like survival mode where like I was living with my mom and dad at the time, but just my dad at that point, and I just, he's an old school Italian man who was completely broken from losing my mom. He didn't know how to like do bills. He didn't know how to do any of the stuff that like an adult person should know how to do. So I kind of just like jumped into that role to probably ignore my own feelings about what was going on. So for a while it was like chilling. But then, certainly within like 6 months or a year, it was like back at it where it was, if not worse. Gained a lot of weight during the time that my mom was sick. When my mom passed away, I gained like 35 pounds. I didn't have a job. I was right out of grad school. Like all these things were like challenging at that time. And I wasn't talking about what was going on. I was just kind of, keeping it inside, surface level, talking about it with my family and my sisters and things like that. But, I was very much struggling. I was single. Like there's just a lot of stuff going on for me at that time. That's the other kind of like thing about my drinking that was, oh, I'm not like them kind of thing, is like it was like Russian roulette. Like I could have like one or two and be chilling and go home and have my complete faculties, or I can have like three and then not know what happened for the rest of the night because I'm blacking out and driving home drunk and getting myself into situations that are dangerous and that anxiety the next day, the shame and the dry throat and the pounding heart and the headache and like all that like kind of withdrawal-y kind of feeling, that was like really real for me. So yeah, definitely like peaks and valleys during my time drinking, and it definitely correlated with my mental health as well. Like when I wasn't feeling well, I was drinking more. When I was not satisfied with what was going on with my life, I was drinking more. Towards the end, I was drinking at people instead of talking to people. Especially like to deal with like my anger and my resentments. Like instead of talking to my partners about what was going on with me, cause I couldn't form the words. I didn't have those skills. I would just drink about it. And then, eventually it just all blow up and I would like explode and get like very verbally angry and say terrible things. And, yeah, so I would definitely say, especially with my mental health, that when I wasn't in a great place with my mental health, and my drinking was definitely worse at those times.
Yeah. Lead us up to the last day, the last day that you drank. Kind of lead us up to that event. You said it was April 17th, 2019, which I want to make a comment on because you're the same year as me. We got sober before COVID. Thank God.
Thank God.
The Lord. I think that was serendipity for me and you because so many people upticked their drinking during COVID. So lead us up to that day.
Leading us up to that day, I was having years at that point where I would look in the mirror and be like, am I like mom? Because that felt safer to say than am I an alcoholic, or do I have a problem drinking or whatever. At that point I was dating somebody. They're always the one, right? They're always the one when you're in it. He was not the one. And I was accepting the behavior of him being non-monogamous. He had another girlfriend. He started dating right after we started dating. I remember telling him that like, okay, let me know when that gets serious, knowing damn well I was not going to leave. I was not going to leave him. I have a thing for musicians, so he's a musician. And that night, those last few months were probably the worst drinking that I was doing. I remember that St. Patrick's Day where like he was just as drunk as I was, but I was like, hey, you drive us home. We came home, we watched a movie, and I don't remember having sex with him that night because I was in a blackout. And he had sex with me. And I was like, ooh, that's not great. Consent is a thing, and I can't consent if I'm blacked out drunk, which I didn't know at the time, obviously, because blackout drunk. Right. So like there was stuff like that happening more and more. So the night that was the bottom for me, it was a Tuesday night, very normal to go into the city on a Tuesday night and drink for 12 hours. Very normal. Very normal behavior. So yeah, I was drinking all night, took the train to the city, train beers, and the margaritas 3 margaritas before the train, then a train beer, and then calling my boyfriend's mom, be like, hey, can you give me like a shot and a beer? Because happy hour is going to stop at 8 because my life revolves around alcohol and getting it the cheapest way possible. So my last drink was like a glass of red wine at 12:30 after I bought everybody else around. Because again, I need people to like me. I want to be number one. I want to have that validation to fill whatever God-shaped hole, Jamie-shaped hole that there is, And so I got on the train home. I let this like skeezy guy like hit on me and touch me on the train, like, touch my leg or whatever to get back at my ex, which is like, what the hell? But when you're drinking, you don't think like that, And then I drove home to my apartment complex, just like the dozens and dozens of times before that I would drive drunk, but this time I feel like God, higher power, universe was like, I'm done with your shit. And this time I clipped a car, with my car. My car was like 5 days old and cost like $9,000 worth of damage to my brand new car. Irma's great now. She's going to be hitting 100,000 miles soon. We have so many adventures, together now. But yeah, that's when it all shattered. Like this illusion that I was like okay, and that I was functioning because I was a high functioning drinker, and this illusion that this like mirror of my life shattered. Like it's not real. Like I'm not okay. This is not okay behavior. That's when I started the journey. And because I was still like in denial about my alcohol stuff, I was like, oh, therapy will fix me. Therapy's going to fix this. Although I never talk about drinking in my therapy. All I do is talk about my partner, what they're doing, and blah, blah, blah. Which is wild because now, like I said, in life coaching, I'm looking at you, client, about what you're doing. What role are you playing in this? Which is completely wild because I definitely wasn't like that when I was in therapy. So because of that I called to get into therapy, and they said they had like a 2.5 week wait list, and I was like, oh no, I'm gonna start drinking. That's not, and I know drinking is related to this somehow. It's related to like all the misery in my life, so that's when I started, in a certain recovery group, and I started, doing my work through that group. And like I was one of those people that like, as of right now, I can't predict tomorrow, but as of right now, I came and I stayed, and I want to stay sober, because sobriety is, I'd have nothing in my life if my mental health and my sobriety are not the priority. If they're not the foundation of my life, everything else is going to crumble. So when I think about, I just have so much love and compassion for that 32-year-old Jamie who like didn't know who she was, who was just like bending over backwards for everyone, who would, who would change who she was for whoever needed her to be, whatever, because that's how she thought she was going to get love and validation because of the experiences I had as a teenager, as a young person, that showed me that told me it's not true anymore. It told me that I'm not good enough, and that I'm unlovable, and that there's something wrong with me, and that I'm different. Just like to look back on her with compassion and love, and knowing that like I can reparent myself, even if my parents didn't do what I wish they would do. Like I have the ability as a 39-year-old ass woman to reparent myself and to, do the hard things. Like I had to do something the other day where like, I'm dating somebody, I guess. I don't know how my dates counts dating, but I'm dating someone, and like, I thought he ghosted me, but he just like didn't talk to me for a week. And I was like, and instead of like sitting in my resentment about it, when he did reach out, like I said, it was about a week, via text, or whatever. I had to take a pause before I like say something silly. Straight of pen and tongue is very important. Like, does it need to be said? Does it need to be said now? Does it need to be said by me? All those were yes for this particular situation. But just texting him and saying like, hey, like, I just want to be transparent with you. I thought that you didn't want to connect anymore because you hadn't talked to me in a week. And I let him respond. He's like, oh, I've been so busy, so I'm so sorry. And I was like, I need more communication between when we see each other. That's something that I need. And he's like, okay, I hear you. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. And I was going to wait for him to see if he stepped up, and he stepped up, and he's stepping up, So like that conversation would have either never happened or would have come in some like drunken like rage after I drank about it for weeks and weeks, like I don't have to be afraid to have conversations with people now. I don't have to be afraid to express my needs. And like, that's just like such a beautiful gift that I would go through what I went through like tenfold to be able to have this gift again, you know?
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, one, it shows emotional intelligence and emotional maturity, but it's almost like you had to go through all of that to get to the maturity and intelligence that you have now. But I think that's great. I mean, you're also talking about boundaries that you have with people. That's something I've learned much later in life because I also am in recovery from people pleasing,
Yep.
and I think it's so good to have that communication too. And, when you're drinking, you just like it throws fire on all of the negative emotions you already
Oh,
have.
it does. It does, Meg. It does.
Yeah, definitely. I want to
And what I
go.
love
Go
I
ahead.
was about to say, because you said boundaries, and I know I also like quotes, but one of my favorite things I learned in early sobriety, like through my therapist, who was an alcohol drug therapist, she focused on that, but she also focused on like the integrated family systems model, which I think is an amazing model, the IFS model. That, and I remember this when I have to like say what I gotta say, is that boundaries are where I can love you and me at the same time.
I love that. That's
Right? And I'm
really
like,
good.
how much more compassionate can you be towards somebody? Listen, like, I love you, but also gotta love me. So this is where I'm at,
Hmm.
So yeah, I love that.
That one's going to lock in my brain. I'll remember that one. I like that one a lot. I want to go back to the day you woke up, April
Mm,
2019. And I was there. I was there a week later. So I'm
yep.
imagining you waking up, your car's
Mm.
wrecked, your life's a wreck, you're distraught. What was your first thought? Like, was your first thought, okay, I don't ever need to drink again? Or were you like, maybe I
Oh,
won't drink today? Or like, what did you do that day? How did you set
uh,
yourself up for success?
my thoughts well, after the 4 hours of fitful sleep I had because I didn't get home till 3 a.m. from that
Right.
fateful night, and I woke up and, I was like, I have to do something about this. It wasn't like I need to stop drinking. It wasn't that, I'm fine. No, it's like I need to do something about this, like this is not acceptable behavior anymore. Like I could have hurt somebody. I could have killed myself. I could have killed somebody else last night. The fact that I was so drunk that I hit another car, when I like was driven, like I said, many times before drunk. So aside from that was this overwhelming feeling of shame, this overwhelming feeling of like, what have I gotten myself into? How did I do this? How did I like fuck up so bad? I cried a lot that week. That was a rough week. I'm at like the car dealer, the car mechanic, and they're talking to me about my car, and I'm like crying. They're like, "Oh, it's okay, honey. We'll get you like a nice, like, Dodge Challenger to drive." And I'm like, "This thing's huge. I don't want to drive this," but like, whatever. It was fine. It was funny. It was kind of cool to have this car. And another one of my thoughts was honestly that morning is like, I have to end things with Stevie. That's my ex's name. I
Mm-hmm.
have to end things with him. I can't like focus on me if I'm in that
Absolutely.
situation with him and his other partner. They lived in the Queen, like they lived in the city. Like I can't deal with me if I'm dealing with that.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a little while to get there, but like, about a week after it all happened, like I had to like, end that with him, which is fine. But like, it's so easy. Like what makes me think now looking back on that, like it's so easy for people who are in like addiction situations or in mental health situations, so easy for us to distract ourselves by other things because it's so easy for us to go there and like, what are you doing to me? Or like, how are you hurting me? Instead of like being like, where is my accountability in this? Like it takes two
Mm-hmm.
people to tango. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it takes
Go
two people
inward.
to be, yeah, to be in a relationship. It takes two people to have an argument. That's like a newer one that I've been thinking about. Like it takes two people. Like, so what is my role in
Mm-hmm.
it? And it's just very scary. I feel like for a lot of people, it's very scary to turn inward like that and to really take responsibility because then you have to reflect on all the things that you've done, like
Mm-hmm.
that were not, of a nature that was serving you.
Mm-hmm.
I never want to feel again that I'm in a place where like I'm letting like a man or or a woman, whoever I'm dating. I never want to be in a place where like I am, like tearing myself apart for somebody else. And that's how I felt like it when I was dating, especially in those last few years of my dating. I just felt like, especially with my mental health, that I was just distracting myself with these people when I knew that like I deserved more and that I could get more. But like I was just used to like beating myself down and being like, you're only as good as you are as somebody else sees you, which is like a wild thing to think now.
The twisted thing about what you're talking about is like those types of relationships are addictive in a way. The
Mm-hmm.
narcissistic or whatever you want to call
Oh
them.
yeah.
And we could sit here and break that down. It's especially addictive to a people pleasing type of person because we want to please them. We want to please them. We want to make sure that they're happy. We want to fix them, right? A type of person like me and you that are similar to that, we will stay in those relationships until we're completely broken.
Oh yeah, like the anxious attachment versus the avoidant attachment, which I definitely could see those dynamics in both of my big relationships towards the end of my drinking, like I'm just looking for all this reassurance and I will hold out and I will keep manipulating it, whatever. And as soon as they put like one little pellet into my fishbowl, I'm like gobbling that up. I'm like, oh, that was the best pellet I've ever had in my whole life. When it's like, no, I need more than one pellet to survive, but like we just like literally like we're like emotionally starved, and we will take whatever we can get, and I'm so grateful that you and I don't have to be in that kind of place today.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a sober person dating, because I think that's very hard for some people and maybe even keeps people still drinking because they're afraid to be someone that has to say, I don't drink, or they're dating, the first few dates and they don't drink. And is that, quote unquote, embarrassing for them? Like, give us your experience as a person in recovery dating.
It's certainly an experience because, I always say like, yeah, I'm like a stable-ish sober person, but put me in a relationship and let's see how that goes. Because it's definitely been, even in this most recent situation, there's definitely been moments of like, what's going on, whatever.
Yeah.
And, I do recommend, did I adhere to this? No, but I do recommend like, for that first year, like focus on yourself, like focus on your recovery. It's number one. It's the foundation on all the beautiful things that are going to come into your life. Did I F around and found out with my ex like 5 months in because I just was feeling good and I wanted to like, have one over
research.
Maybe.
Yeah, you did field research.
I did a little emotional field research and it felt good, but whatever. I did, not unfortunately, I did go back to that dynamic with him for a couple years, but it's been a while now since I've been there. As a sober person dating, the first thing you always hear usually is like, oh, let's get a drink or whatever. I make it very clear on all my profiles, like online dating, that I'm sober. I will not only check the box on whatever the app is, I will also mention it in my bio that I am sober.
Okay. I love it. Loud and proud.
Loud and proud. So there's no there's no miscommunication about it,
Do people ask you about it? Like, is that something they swipe up and they discuss with you about your sobriety, or do they keep
sometimes.
it like, okay, I love that.
Sometimes they do, I have dated people who are normal drinkers or normies, as we say, and, sometimes they check and think it's okay if I have a drink. I'm like, absolutely. Like I live in a world full of alcohol, so I can't like avoid it, I always make sure that, whatever the first date is usually not a bar. It's a weird thing for a first date. But, I always make sure that, when I am out and about, and I am somewhere where there is alcohol, that I always check out the menu beforehand to see if there's something that I can drink that I can enjoy. I love a good mocktail. I do partake in non-alcoholic beers here and there, being sober is a big part of my life. It's nothing that I'm ashamed of. And, like recently I was dating somebody or going on dates with somebody and, they literally had no idea about like sobriety or about like the different recovery communities out there. So, like it felt kind of cool to kind of like share my experience in that way. And they're asking questions like, well, what does that mean? What does this mean? And they seem to be genuinely interested about like this other way of life, because there's a lot more of us out there than people know. I remember I got sober and I only knew 2 people, and then these people would be popping into my life that I knew from high school or I knew from wherever. They're like, yeah, I'm sober too. And like, what? Like, oh my God, it's so fun. But, when it comes to like, sober dating, and dating and sobriety, like it's really important to like have a clear vision of what you're looking for and to be careful of like when you are kind of like swaying one way or the other, like and that's not happened to me, but like if I'm going out on a date with somebody and if they were like, having like 3-4 beers during like a date, like that probably wouldn't be somebody that I would see again, and I do like swipe left on people when I'm like, oh, you have more than 2 pictures of you with alcohol on, swipe. Your hobby is going to the beer garden, swipe. Like, no, none of that is, and so certainly it does limit the dating pool, but it's limiting the dating pool to people who actually might be more aligned with what I'm looking for. And that is more important to me than to be going on dates just to go on dates. Like I want to go on intentional dates with people who are looking for like a real connection and who would be supportive of my sobriety and curious about it. Like, 'cause I just don't drink. Like, that's it. Like, I can do the rest I can go to bars and I can go to concerts and I can go to weddings. I just don't drink, you
Yeah.
know? So like when it was younger in my sobriety, I'd be like, about it and like
Right.
sharing it with new trust. But now it's just like a normal thing, about
Yeah.
it. And I just like, like if someone offers me a drink, I just say no, thank you, or I'm like, oh, I'll have a seltzer or whatever,
Hmm.
But it's really important to, because it can be very like nerve wracking to like
Yeah.
not only you're going on a date, but you're going like sober. You have to like feel your feelings and like be
Right.
honest. No one wants to do that. Um, you
I
know,
love it though. I love
but
what
it's a
you brought up.
practice. It's a practice.
Yeah, I love how you brought up sober concerts because I remember my very first sober concert. Every other concert
Oh, me
before
too.
then, I
Yes.
mean, even when I was young, I mean, Warped Tour, all of it, I was wasted at.
Hmm.
So it was 2021 because COVID took out a lot of concerts
Yes.
during 2020. So it was Chris Stapleton. I was in the lawn at Verizon in Alpharetta. If you've been to this event venue, you know what I'm talking about.
Mm.
And I had like a spiritual experience just listening to him. If you've ever been to Chris Stapleton, he just sits up there with his guitar. He doesn't need all the
Oh,
lights and theatrics. It's just him and his raw talent, right? And
sounds
I just
amazing.
like, me and him just like connected. I'm like looking at him and every song, I remember the whole experience. And around me, people are falling down, drunk, fighting, just a hot mess everywhere I look. But me and Chris, we had the best night of my life. So, yeah, I mean, I think experiences sober, some people think, God, they're going to suck. Like, it's going to be boring. It is the opposite of boring for
Oh my
sure.
God, it's the opposite. And I often will go to concerts by myself because I'm my own best date. I can come and go when I please. I can eat what I want, drink what I want, and leave when I want. My
Yeah.
first sober experience was not as fun at concert, but I got through it. I was like 2.5 months sober. Like I was baby sober. And I was going
Hmm.
to this like big festival in New Jersey. It was like the Rockstar Energy Drink like festival with the Used and Thursday and maybe All American Rejects. I don't remember what else, but like I was going through it. I was going through the sobriety thing. One of my cats was sick, and like I just like mentally I was not there, not well, and all I do is smell beer around me. It's like, bleh, I'm like, oh God, like how do I used to drink this? So I leaned on my tools at that point, which was literally like calling myself out to Jamie. I'm like, Jamie, I'm not gonna drink today, but all this beer feels like a lot, so I'm gonna go like buy lots of food to eat right now. So I went and I bought lots of food to eat. I enjoyed that food that I ate, and me and Jamie, so she's my friend Jamie. We had a great time. We like got moved up to fifth row, so we were like so close, whatever. And like I
Yeah.
was so frightened that like I wouldn't be able to go to shows anymore. Because I also loved drinking at shows, and I love shows. Like music is a big part of my life. I'm an elder emo, as they say. Like I love my music from the 2000s, like Fall Out Boy and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Old Fall Out Boy, not new Fall Out Boy. But anyway, yeah, I was very scared that I wouldn't be able to like go to concerts anymore, and I'm glad that everything takes it takes practice, and I always recommend if you're going to an uncomfortable situation with drinking, like making sure you have sober buddies with you. So like especially in the beginning, I made sure like some of my sober friends would be around me, or a friend who knew about my recovery would be with me. So and can keep me accountable and also be able to be there so in case I need to talk about what's going on. But I love
Yeah.
dancing sober. I love doing live sober and being concerts, and I'm present now. I'm
Yeah.
present now. And
Hmm.
I just love that. It's the best.
I think that is literally the meaning of life, like to live in the present moment. I love
Mm-hmm.
that. And I think for some people, I mean, you're very extroverted like me. Not everyone is going to figure it out and have the best experience the first few times sober. Like you almost have to build up your sober muscle
Oh
over
yeah.
time, and it just gets easier and easier and better and better. So, and I love how you talked about planning. Like that is so important, like having a buddy, having a mocktail. Like my mocktail is Shirley Temple everywhere I go. It never changes.
No, well, I love how earlier you asked me how did you set yourself up for success, on that day one or whatever. And I always believe that too. When I'm talking to my sober girlies and they're going to like a situation, especially if they're new to sobriety, bookend the situation. Who are you calling before? Who are you calling after? Like I used to huff lavender oil like there was no tomorrow when I was in social situations. Okay, I'm fine. Just to relax and stuff,
I love
what
that.
are you bringing to the party? Like actually to drink. What are you bringing? You always bring something to the party. But what are you
Yeah.
bringing to the party to drink? Who there knows about your sobriety. And what time are you leaving? Because you need to have an end game and an
Hmm.
escape plan. And then what are you doing for yourself when you get home? To take
Yeah.
care of yourself and to like pat yourself in the back. You did a good job.
Yeah.
Like that may sound like a lot, but I feel like it sets people up for success, and it's things you need to think about because if you don't have a plan, you're just going to grab and do it. Like I have this friend, I love her. I don't want to like shout people out, on the podcast, but she would be in my DMs years before she came to like sober IRL, right? She'd be in my DMs and she'd be like, happened again, it slipped up, and like I'm just encouraging. I'm like, just you reach out to me, like always reach out to me if you feel like picking up, like you don't have to. I know you're gonna get it, like you're on the path. And now she is sober like 2 years, over 2 years,
Wow.
or almost 2 years, and she has a thriving business. She's divorcing her husband. She is living her best damn life now,
Wow.
and it's only because like, she had the strength and the courage to continue to reach out and to not give up.
Yeah.
Because she saw people like you and people like myself doing it.
Yeah. Then that's what the whole point of the show is to give people hope in whatever situation they're in.
Absolutely.
I want to close out with a few things. I want to tell the listeners what you're doing now. So you mentioned you're a life coach, which is really cool. I think you're going to be so good at that. And then you also host a recovery group. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, I've been hosting this recovery group, Sober IRL, for, oh my God, over 4 years now. We formed during the pandemic. We're the only chapter that's still around, and our virtual meetings are for anybody, no matter where you live. It's for the girls, the gays, and the theys, we say. So sorry if you're a straight white man, go somewhere else. There's plenty of places for you. So yeah, we do have virtual meetings once a month, and then we also meet in person, and some of my best friends are from this group. It's amazing. We're there for the sober and the sober curious. So even if you're curious about your relationship with alcohol, you're welcome. So that's been wonderful. And I am now a certified life coach. I'm like finishing up this month, so it's another way for me to like be of service to people. It was a very intensive 6 months of training. Like I am a completely different person than I was earlier. In this process, I thought that I was being all honest and authentic, and oh no, there's lots of stuff in here that no matter how much you're in recovery, there's also always things to learn and things to move forward. So I do offer those services, virtually and in person, and things like that. And the next step on that journey is to become an interfaith minister, so I can be there for people's most important moments, their weddings and their funerals and their baby blessings and things like that, just to be able to, again, be on the spiritual path with other people who need people who want to be there, to be, to give them guidance and give them hope, and to be there part of their special moments. Like there's nothing better. I have a client right now, my first client, and there's nothing more beautiful than when like I gently call her out and she's like, oh fuck, you're right. I'm like, yes, like let's go, let's dig in here. Like, because we all deserve to live a life free with our own free will. And the only way that we get through that is we really like go inside and be like, what is your motivation behind all of these situations in your life, all these people you're involved with? What is your motivation? What is your behavior? Where are you accountable? It's a lot more than that, but that's the start of it. And yeah, I'm entering my 40 year of life, just like you, my friend. I'm going to be turning 40 this summer. So, I'm so excited for what the 40th decade is going to offer, because
honestly, it's been great. Like I thought I was going to wake up with like back pain or something traumatic, but I have been 40 now for 6 months and I'm thriving, you guys. My back is good. I better knock on some wood, but yeah, it's really
not going to for you. There you go.
Well, I think, in the long scheme of things, like 40 is still very young. Like we are still very
young.
Oh my God.
We're still halfway in. I'm offended that I'm middle aged now. Like that's a little offensive, but,
right.
Like when I think about like our physical bodies, like this is a time, if you are having some mental health stuff going on, or you are having some addiction issues going on, this is the time to deal with it, because we only get this one life. We only get this one vessel. So pouring poison inside of it and ingesting poison and letting your mental health, because your mental health affects everything, your mental health can bring on physical problems, so if we're not like taking care of our mind, body, soul, now our bodies are not going to last as long as we want to be on this earth, so that's why I think it's so important.
Or the quality
to take care
of our
ourselves.
Life. Yeah. Or the quality of our life as
absolutely
we age is going to go down. So I definitely agree with that. Okay, we are in the lightning round of the episode. So these are the same 5 questions I ask every guest. So just give me your best answer. Are you ready?
Okay. I'm ready.
Yeah, you're ready. I need the dun dun dun. All right. So the first question, if you were given 3 options, you have to do one: shark dive, bungee jump, or skydive.
Shark dive. Shark's my favorite animal. Shark dive.
Oh,
yes,
that's
I've done one of those other things before.
I knew that about you. I knew you were going to say that. Okay, number 2, you're in a simulation. So every room you walk into plays the same song. What song is that?
Sugar We're Going Down by Fall Out Boy.
Oh my God, such a good song. It's such an anthem. It's so good.
Yes.
Okay, number 3. What is your favorite Disney movie?
Lilo and Stitch.
I was staring. Okay, so guys, you can't see this unless you're watching on
Oh, that's
YouTube.
right.
There's a Stitch in the background, and I'm
There
obsessed
is.
with Stitch. The first one that came out, I think I was in high school. I just like Stitch was a baddie. You know what I mean? He just like
Stitch
didn't
was
care
a weird
about the
baddie,
rules.
and I can identify with it. And, part of my job is I work for Child Protective Services now, but obviously at the time of the movie, I did not. And Mr. Bubbles, I thought was the coolest mother
He was
out there,
cool.
and I'm like, oh my God, now I work for Mr. Bubbles' job. That's awesome.
You are Mr. Bubbles.
I am, just a girl version,
Oh, that's awesome. All right, number 4. What is something you're obsessed with?
What am I obsessed with? My adult hip hop dance class. I
Love
love
it.
dancing. I am a parent on the tunes now that the kids are dancing to on TikTok or whatever. Oh, I just love moving my body, and that's a new way that I've learned to love to do it.
I love that. That sounds so
I'm
fun.
also obsessed with Severance. Me and my coworkers have been watching Severance.
Okay.
Season 2 was wild. It was such a great show. If you hadn't seen it, I highly recommend.
Okay, I'll check that one out. All right, and the last question. What does freedom mean to you?
Freedom to me means having the chutzpah, the power to be your authentic self in every situation you walk into. That's freedom to me.
I love that. That was perfect. Perfect answer. Perfect way to close out this episode. I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story. You're such an open book, and it's just so refreshing. You don't hold anything back, and I think the listeners are really going to relate to that. And your story is a beautiful story. I mean, you went through a lot, and you overcame it, and you're still just so curious about life. And I can tell how much you love people, and we just need more people like you in this world.
Oh, Meg, you're the best. Thank you so much. It's been a long time since I've talked about my story in this way. This is why we do what we do. I don't want anyone to ever feel like they're alone in their situation. So I'm sure everyone knows that there's resources out there. Reach out to Meg, reach out to me. We're happy to be here. And I'm just so honored that you asked me to be a guest on your show. You're amazing.
Yes, I will link your information, your Instagram, your Sober IRL
Sounds great.
to the episode. Yes.
Awesome.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Meg.
Bye.
Bye.